Thanks everyone. So quick intro, Alex Holtzapple. You can hear me in the back, I assume. It's never been a problem with me. Alex Holtzapple, METSIM International President. I've had that role since early 2018. I have been with the company now 18 going on 19 years. So have been doing METSIM for a while. METSIM is short for Metallurgical Simulator. So as you will see in this talk for the next 25 minutes or so, there will be no mind-blowing syntax put up there. You will not learn any APL from me. I am what we call self-taught, simply through working as an extractive metallurgist, or for the Europeans in the room, metallurgist. So what does that mean? We work in the mining industry, right? And to put that in layman's terms, what we do at METSIM, we don't dig the hole, we turn the rock into product, right? And so gold bars rolling out the door, you might be able to picture a little bit clearly, and that's actually what that symbol right there in METSIM's logo, those are the gold bar products there at the end. We work with laboratories, we work with mining, and we work with the processing facility. That's what the four different little icons there mean. So that's a little bit about METSIM. But before I go further, just some quick acknowledgements. Yes, I was at the Ryder Cup yesterday. No, I was not cheering for the team that won, but it was a hell of a couple of hours when the Americans mounted a comeback. If you're a golf fan, it really was a great day to be out there. And so thank you to our European friends who are here that I do cheer for, and congratulations on coming over here and winning in hostile territory. And if you are a fan and you haven't gone, do so. It really is electric. Okay, brief history of METSIM. I told you a little bit about who I am. Morton mentioned John Bartlett. That is our founder. He sadly passed away in 2018 after retiring in 2017. But he actually started working on METSIM in 1978. He was working as a process engineer in Arizona. And at that time, most engineers didn't have access to computers. Actually, I think none of them in the 70s had access to computers. Everything was being done by hand. And so the term mass balancing, it's real simple. There's a basic principle to what METSIM does. Mass in equals mass out, right? If you study thermodynamics, you know that you can't destroy mass. And so unless you have infinite residence time, which nothing does, maybe the universe does, we don't know, what goes in must come out. And that's the whole basis for designing tanks, pumps, this type of major equipment. Okay, so these guys were doing this by hand. And John thought there's got to be a better way. You know, he was a geologist, he was a chemical engineer, had his background in mining like me, but he always loved computers. I think there's a picture of him walking around with this, giant box behind him going from place to place to demonstrate METSIM in the early 80s. Because he loved it, and he knew early on that we can utilize computers. He got introduced to APL, I think somewhere around the mid-late 70s, and that was the birth of METSIM. First registered as a commercial product in '82, so he did work on it for about 4 years before putting that first product together, getting it registered, and then we've maintained that registration. So it was great. A few years ago, we got to celebrate 40 years of METSIM as a product. A big thing that happened in the 90s was a conversion to a graphical interface, right? Engineers, we like to see pictures of what it is we're looking at. And I've got a few images from our software here to give you an idea. It's similar to a map, right? Imagine you had a map of New York City and you were trying to find it, but all you had were lines of code or boxes with lines of code in them. Hard to find your way around. So engineers couldn't really relate to what METSIM was trying to teach them. We need that roadmap. You actually need buildings with streets and street names, which is what a graphical interface did for METSIM. And now our competitors around the world, and ourselves included, strictly work with what we call flow sheet simulation. Okay, so flow sheet being that map of what the plant looks like. We have sold licenses to over 700 companies, 250 universities worldwide. Currently active in 54 countries. And so METSIM has spread around the globe. I like to say that mining is one of the biggest, smallest industries on the planet. It is in every corner, and it always is in the corner, by the way, because it's never located anywhere you want to go. But we have been able to get into each of those corners, and it's been a lot of fun doing that. And then the bottom point, the reason I'm standing here right now, we made the decision to convert from APL+Win to Dyalog in 2025. So we had a few years of debate, And we'll tell you a little bit about that journey here as we go on. Here's the METSIM GUI in APL+Win. So Morton, I think the term that you used is it's very retro and Atari looking, and it has looked like that in a little while. But basically what we're talking about, a flow sheet simulator, is these things represent pieces of equipment. Engineers know what those look like. This is obviously a tank, right? This is another type of equipment over here. And then these things are connected with what we call streams, right? And so each of those streams houses vectors, matrices, et cetera, of information, right? See, I can at least talk to a group of developers in terms that you understand. All of that information then is housed within. There's an interactive interface that you click and you can see everything that's contained therein. You run calculation sequences, but we won't go into the details of that, okay? The point of putting up this METSIM GUI in APL+Win is there's the METSIM GUI now in Dyalog, okay? My first decision when migrating was we do not want to simply come out and have a brand new user interface for people in 54 different countries at over 700 universities to learn overnight. That would be a disaster for my team, and it would be a disaster for them. And so when I first started talking with the team at Dyalog, I said, can we make this look the same? Everything behind the scenes is new. It's all in Dyalog. We didn't hold anything back. We converted everything. But it's important for our users, which, by the way, we just unleashed this version on the world about 3 days before I took a 2-week holiday. So I trust my team, or I'm a maniac, bit of both. That has been going really well. We'll talk about that later. But the important thing was that those users that install this version, they load it up, and they can load their existing models from APL+Win, and we put a lot of effort into that as well. So we can actually migrate. The team at Dyalog built me just this nice utility. We can go in and load a model in the Dyalog GUI and say, convert this APL+Win model into a new METSIM Dyalog model. It takes a couple of seconds to do so. They fire it right up, and they're operational. No new user interface, no learning curve. Now we've got this right where we want it. Why make it the same? For everything I said, but now we have all the benefits, right? And I'll talk a little bit about the why. 18 months it took us to convert. And again, we are still working on this. There are a few things that we've set aside that we've yet to convert over, but I think, Morton Dyalog team, I met with you in January of 2024. Maybe we started work March 1st, and as I said, September 1st, we unleashed this. So for a product that's been around commercially for more than 40 years, to be able to move it from APL+Win to Dyalog in 18 months was incredibly impressive. We did think that we could knock it out in 12 months. Life happens. That's one of the lessons learned here, right? And those weren't necessarily just unforeseen code changes. Those were unforeseen personnel changes, right? Nobody stays somewhere forever. People on our side change. People on Morton's team change. And so, I've always said I like to do a little bit of housework, and much to my wife's, well, we'll just leave it there. And I always tell her, this will take me about 6 months to do. And she says, okay, so double the time, triple the cost. That's usually where she leaves it. And most of the time, she's pretty accurate. But initial estimate of 12 to 14 months, getting this done in 18, and at the cost that we anticipated, definitely a success. The online repository utilizing GitHub. I'll be honest. This is a huge success unless the guy who gets involved sometimes doesn't fully understand the workflow. So another lesson learned. When you're setting up these repositories and you're setting up these tools, it's just like building the most advanced aircraft out there. If you don't get a pilot in and train them how to use it, they're going to not even get it off the runway. Well, I got it off the runway and then put it out in the ocean somewhere.
I just wanted to say we will be able to recover what happened.
Okay.
Because it's in GitHub, we'll figure it out.
Thank you. This was literally 5 days ago.
Yeah.
I think you replied with, I'm somewhere over Iceland, but let me look into it, was the reply. Because I said, I think I just broke everything. And thank you to Martina, who's around as well, for recovering that. So the Dyalog team did create the GitHub repository. I simply went in and uploaded the associated workspaces and component files that was requested of me, and it allowed that cross-team collaboration and that easy check system. So again, maybe a little bit of trial by fire, but again, lesson learned for the Dyalog team and for myself. Let's get the workflow squared away before really diving into the work, because I unfortunately have added to the workload a little bit. The direct conversion, easy, right? It's Dyalog APL from APL+Win. A lot of the symbols are the same, a lot of the syntax is the same. Piece of cake there for quite a bit of it. Dyalog emulators for APL+Win, and this was less easy. We did see a little bit of this. I know Davin, thank you for your efforts back there as well, Davin, has been working on the Delta Wii emulator, which we are using quite a bit. John leaned heavily on the Quad WI through APL+Win of development, and I learned that way, and so then I then also relied on it quite a bit. And it's not easy to replace that much code when it impacts your GUI. I see a couple people nodding their heads, so that's been a nice tool to add, and hopefully something that the Dyalog team can use going forward. Where improvements could be made, they were. I say very easy. Why? Well, John was self-taught, I'm self-taught. We're the only two people that have ever run this company. So getting some professionals in who can look at something and say that's just not the way it should be done. Let's go ahead and do it. I said, look, we can keep the GUI as it is. I'd like that to look the same. But where we can make improvements, let's make them. Go ahead and grab that low-hanging fruit. There's no reason to sit on that. And then we were included throughout the entire process, myself as well as a few engineers on my team. And when I say engineers, again, I don't have any developers on my team. So now we're going back to another lesson that we learned is my team needs to be somewhat educated on how Dyalog functions. And these are engineers like myself. They're chemical engineers. They're metallurgical engineers, right? They come from the mining background. But just knowing a little bit about what Dyalog can do, what does it look like? So we did a few training sessions with them, got them just dangerous enough to make the same mistakes that I've been making. But the foundation is there now. We want to eventually go from a company that works in the mining industry, because that's the first thing I say. When somebody says, what do you do for a living? I say I work in the mining industry. I don't say I'm a developer. I don't say we're a software company. I say we're in the mining industry. I would like us to move a little bit more towards the middle to be able to say we're software developers in the mining industry. And we're getting there, right? That's part of the process here. So what makes that easier for us? We've got APL+Win on the left. We've got Dyalog on the right. Okay, bit of code. Couldn't tell you what it does. It's fine. But I can tell you that every line there is readable just as it was before. And so again, not reinventing the wheel. Get those pieces of low-hanging fruit, go ahead and clean those up. But my team, if whoever wrote that program on the left, they can now pick that up and look at it on the right. Right? And that's another lesson learned. Don't just go in and change things to change them at the start. Try to keep it so that everybody gets what I call a soft landing into a new product. And that's been extremely helpful. This I really don't understand, but Morton sent me this and asked if I would put this in. So we are using Visual Studio Code. It's part of the workflow. Morton, maybe you can fill in the gaps on this one?
I think you do understand this. I mean, this is the line of code. It says here, Alex Holtzapple. You added that line of code. That's all it's telling you.
Okay, see?
And over here you can see, the changes Martina made, Morton did this, and then there's, something that you did as well.
Okay, so the purpose of this being up here then is, again, for things like last week when I went in and made a mistake and I don't know where it was. Because we have this, it's traceable, we can find it and we can recover from it, okay? The mistakes never made it into production. I've at least learned that much, right? But being able to go back, find out exactly who done it, when done it, and then correct it. It's really important to the workflow and to the success of this conversion. So this has been really helpful as well. I did hit on this a little bit. We've relied on these APL Windows commands. I just say no more, right? We've been married to Windows since our inception, right? We had to tell everyone, now that you have VMs, that you can have a Mac running a Windows VM, but our security system that we use, they don't necessarily play well in that type of environment. And so being able to decouple METSIM from Windows is going to be a big part of what we're doing now and moving forward, right? Everybody wants to have access on their phone or on their iPad. That's been impossible. It still is impossible, but I feel like this is the first bridge to get us to possible. I would like to have a METSIM app, and these are things that, again, the Dyalog team and myself, we've discussed. Maybe not necessarily the whole software running on that app on your phone, but being able to access it through web commands. Maybe the models are actually sitting somewhere else and we just put a simpler cover on it. We can put in a few variables, say calculate, it's processed elsewhere, but then you get the information back. The possibility of that has me very excited, as well as our customers with whom I've spoken. Why did we do this? I talked about this. MSI exists in the mining sector, but it is a technology and software provider, so we must stay current. There was some talk earlier about OpenAI and ChatGPT. These ChatGPT, these companies are incredibly valuable and they're incredibly current. In which industry do they operate? We don't really know, right? But it's current, and so they're what everybody talks about. If we simply sat back in APL+Win, and no knock on APL+Win if there are folks in here, by the way, but I was never invited to talk at one of their conferences. Staying current, I believe, we had that possibility with Dyalog. I didn't feel that was going to happen with APL+Win. That's the way I felt. A couple of advisors had recommended this move to me as well. And then it was worth the trip over. Before we ever signed a contract, I did take the trip over to Bramley, met the team, sat down and hashed things out over a beer or two, and said, yes, this is the team with which I would like to continue working. And the decision was made before I even got on the plane to come back. Okay. What does staying current also mean? APIs with external systems. We do have multiple software partners within our industry with whom we have APIs. They're clunky. They rely on external programs or files being generated or destroyed. The communication's not great. So I know the Dyalog team has been working with some of my developers in South America about how can we improve our APIs to these other systems? How can we improve the connectivity, right? Whether that's web-based or desktop-based, because one of our partners, they only have a SaaS solution, which means we have to communicate through their cloud. Another one of our business partners, they only have a desktop solution, so we have to be able to continue to communicate on the desktop as well. For those of you in the room that think, why would you still have desktop software? I go back to where those mines are located, right? They're kind of tucked away in that corner over there. A lot of these places, they don't even have their Starlink system set up, right? So on-premises software, desktop apps are completely necessary to service these clients. Calculation speeds, this is something we have a lot of fun with, and all of us here want it to run faster, right? That's something that people agree across the board, whether you're a developer or an engineer using a system. We want the answers more quickly, and being able to upgrade from 32-bit to 64-bit should make that a possibility. And then also some of the techniques that Davin, Martina, Morton, and team bring in. I also want to thank Adam and Carl for their efforts on this as well. They're not here, but I know I mentioned everybody else in the room, but they've been integral to this. And then program development techniques. This is part of why I wanted to be here in New York, aside from the Ryder Cup, obviously, that was just well-timed. But I wanted to stay here for this day because I do want to learn some of these techniques. I like chatting with some of the folks around. I like seeing some of the ideas up on the board. AI, let's talk about that, right? That's something that I should put here on the why. How can we introduce AI in? It sounds like a lot of the work's been done for us, or at least some of the work's been done for us. Maybe it's 3 years away, but just because it's 3 years away doesn't mean we're not going to put a plan in place for it now, right? The federal highway system here wasn't built in 3 years, right? Roosevelt saw that it would take 50, 60 years, and now we've got this great system. So that's how I feel about the AI in METSIM. Can it be this year? Great, even if it's just a sample, right? I feel like that's a possibility. Maybe it's not, we'll chat later. But opening these windows, and we could probably go on and on and on that list, right? But myself, my team, we are excited that directly working with the Dyalog team ensures that we will be using the latest tools and techniques, right? This room's packed. We had to put extra chairs up against the wall there. You know, the future looks good for Dyalog, and so we're excited to be a part of it. And I think those are most of the bloody lessons that were learned. Did I forget anything? Martina, would you like to add anything? Nope? Okay.
I would like to add that it's been an absolute pleasure working with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Have I not paid my bills? No, but I will say, moving forward, just, you know, I will share that we currently, and Morten and I were just discussing this at lunch actually, we don't have an internal development team doing specific Dyalog METSIM at this point. It's 100% being run by Martina and Davin and Morten and team. So we will continue to do that, but the relationship is healthy, it's great. And I think that our efficiency is actually better as well, because again, we don't need to onboard somebody to learn the latest tools and techniques. They're already being employed. And that's something that I think is really benefiting us currently with our new version. Hopefully it's benefiting those customers that have converted over. I've yet to be home since we unleashed it. But I'm sure that's the case, and will be going forward. So thank you to all for sitting through this. Again, I'm sorry it's not more technical. It was more of a story. Keep you awake after lunch, right? And thank you again to the Dyalog team. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all your efforts to this point. Yes?
I must say that I love the UI. I remember it was presented at last year's conference in Scotland, and I fell in love with it. I remember, so one question I do have is has platform support influenced your decision in switching over to Dyalog, or if not, do you see that influencing your business? So like running on Mac, running on Linux, and other things?
Yeah, good question. Fortunately, in our industry, Windows does dominate.
Okay.
But we are definitely seeing the younger engineers that are coming out are much more accustomed to the iOS, Mac type environment, right? They've had phones in their hands since they were 4 years old at this point, which is crazy to think about. And so that type of thinking and that type of interaction 100% influenced us to think we can't just be Windows-based anymore. Okay. We need to expand out, and so we're working towards that. And 100% though, to answer your question.
Thank you very much.
What
Yes.
did your advisors say about hiring APL talent?
About hiring APL talent? Depends on the advisor, obviously. But at this point, yeah, I think, you know, some folks told me, it's crazy, how are you a software development company and you don't have an internal developer? You know, and that's where I say, well, that's my job. No, and then others said, you know, if you want it done quickly and efficiently, hire the experts. And again, that was part of the reason that I flew out and met with the team in Bramley, because I think I hit Morten with that and said, I just don't want Dyalog, I want a team as well. I want a bucket of hours every month that I know I can rely on. And so it goes back and forth. In my experience, I would say that for a project like this, the conversion from APL+Win to Dyalog, let the Dyalog team handle it. As we start some initial development, I'd like for them to handle it, and then maybe in 18 months' time, we'll look at bringing somebody in, maybe start in 12 months, something like that, and then there'll be a bit of a handover and a transition where the Dyalog team will then support that person. But I would think I would recommend anybody that if you're looking to do a conversion, go ahead and just get the external support team to do it. It's easier to manage costs. You don't have to manage that person, right? They manage themselves and they get the job out. Yes?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can speak to the future of your priorities. You mentioned things like calculation speed, you've got the GUI, different platforms. Do you have a feeling as to whether you think the interface, the experience with the program is a higher priority for you, or are you focusing with more on the back end of getting sort of the back end code to maybe go faster or be more memory efficient or new features?
Yeah. Great question great question. So you could be one of our customers, by the way, because that is the #1 feedback we get is, I don't like the way it looks. The way that the world is moving, so most people in here might be familiar with the term digital twin. Okay. If you're not, basically what it is, it's building this in real life as well as here, right? And so we've got 6 digital twins operating currently. The reason I bring that up is they never see METSIM. METSIM is simply a simulation engine in the background, and the digital twin is connected to the plant. The plant sends it information, it processes it, and then puts it out. And what you have in the end is a database where you have maybe 1,000 instruments that were reading from the plant, and now you've got 1,000 more that were simulated side by side. If an instrument goes offline or something along those lines, the digital twin keeps running, and the control system that actually is deciding to open or close a valve, it can pull from the simulated value rather than the actual value, which is no longer there. The importance in that would say, why waste your time developing user interface, right? If that's the push that we're going to take as a company, then we wouldn't bother. However, I do still think that METSIM is a powerful engineering tool. And so yes, there will eventually be a facelift. This is something that we will have to sit down and talk about because again, this has been our interface since the late 90s, right? And so some folks that have been using METSIM, loyal to METSIM for 30+ years, they really would push back if we were to change it. So we go back and forth every year at our annual meeting. It's heated. Some people go one way, some the other. In the end, yes, we do have to update it. However, I mean, look at the kids. The 90s are back, guys. Like,
Everything in the black is great.
yeah, and you can change it. It's customizable, so you can make it a white background. You can go black and white. This is the default, and this is the traditional view. But yes, there will be eventually an overhaul on that, and whether we do all of that within METSIM itself, or if we link to an external program where we say, okay, the engineer perhaps develops everything with these graphics because they're light and they're quick, and then when it's time to print it out to hand it to the manager, go ahead and run it through something else that can take that and make it look better and turn it in as a finished product. So a lot of different avenues there, but sorry, that may have been more than you asked for.
No, that's great.
Yep.
Love it.
Okay. Yes?
Was Dyalog just out of the box faster than APL+Win?
In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. And we're actually investigating that. So we have what we call the ability to run what we call static models, which means mass in, mass out, which means give me a set of conditions, I'll process it and give you the outputs. We can also run dynamic models where things are changing over time, and it's more like an actual plant operating. We have seen that the static models and those calculations are faster right out of the box. We've seen that maybe some of our graphics on the dynamic model are less than optimized. You like that term? Yeah. Which then results in slightly slower calculation speeds. But we'll approach those. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it's kind of about twice as, this is unscientific, we need to measure this, but I think the calculation is about twice as fast out of the box. But the dynamic calculation where there's a chart that's being updated as it runs is going through the emulation layer, which is consuming something like 60% of the CPU to update the graph in real time. And as soon as we get that sorted, you should be running at least 50% faster on the dynamic models as well.
There you go. Written in stone.
We'll see. We'll see, yeah.
Could I bounce off that? I'm curious about memory usage regressions. If you ever hit up any.
Memory usage.
Well, if you ended up hitting like a wistful or something where you wouldn't previously have used as much memory. Do you ever have problems with memory?
No, I mean we went from a 32-bit application to a 64-bit
Yeah.
application. So yes, it uses more memory because 64
But it has more
applications do, but it's unlimited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.